So welcome everybody today to our webinar, KFP and Cradlepoint's webinar, helping retailers cut the wire. We have a great session today, but just before we start, a very quick one on housekeeping rules. If you want to ask any questions, please feel free to do so throughout the webinar. Don't be shy, we want to try and keep this interactive. All we ask is that you open the Q&A tab at the bottom and then just simply put your question into the panelists there. We will be holding a Q&A session at the end, and that will give you an opportunity to ask the panelists direct questions there as well. Just quickly moving on to our agenda. So we'll cover intro into KFP, so who we are, what we do, and truly how our partnership with Cradlepoint delivers value to you, our retail customers. We'll also highlight, why the Cradlepoint solution is vital for uptime. I think we can all agree that uptime is vitally important in today's retail. You can imagine the thousands, even millions lost each year simply through downtime, and the Cradlepoint solution can be the answer to that. We'll also discuss moving beyond the wires, so how a Cradlepoint solution can provide mainline connectivity, but then also act as a 4 and 5G failover solution thereafter. And we'll give you some examples of wireless WAN in retail. And then, like I said, we'll finish off with a nice Q&A at the end. We're very lucky today. We've got some great presenters. So the start of the webinar, we'll start with Steve Chambers. So Steve is KFP's Head of Sales and Marketing. He'll be joined by Roger Jones, so Cradlepoint Solution Architect, and then Paul McHugh, who is Retail and Commercial Director at Cradlepoint as well. So like I said, guys, we've got some great speakers and we're really looking forward to delivering this webinar for you. Without further ado, let's welcome Steve Chambers, our first presenter. Steve, welcome.
Aaron, thanks for that. Hi, everybody. My name's Steve Chambers from KFP, Head of Sales and Marketing. Thanks for your time to join today. Just want to start the session with just give you a bit of introduction to KFP and what we're about and what we do. So Aaron, if you can just pop over to the next slide. Perfect, thanks for that. So we're a leading European retail IT services provider, been established since 2013. That was part of a management buyout. So we've actually been around for over 20 years. So we've got tons of experience in the retail space. In terms of our size, we're around about 60 employees. Turning over about 14 million currently at the end of our last financial year. And we've got plans to double our size and turnover by 2025. So we've got some big growth plans over the next few years. Now we're supporting some big brands in retail. We've got some big American customers and we essentially manage their entire European estate. And that can be anything from sort of 100 to 300 locations, depending on the customer. And they rely on us with limited touch point in Europe for us to manage their estates for them. And we do that very successfully for a lot of our customers. And of course, we're fully accredited. So in terms of operational aspects of the business, we are safe contractor approved for all of our engineers on site. We're ISO 9001 accredited and registered for our operational procedures in the business. And of course, PCI compliance is important for things like PED rollouts and that type of stuff. So you can be assured that working with KFP, you're working with an organization who are fully accredited to deliver all those services. Next slide, Aaron, thanks. So in terms of what we offer, we're the infrastructure partner for all of our customers. So when you walk into a store, all the touch points for technology around the store is where we get involved. So things like back office networking, the IT cab, the manager's office, and all the equipment within that environment. And out on the shop floor, the POS, the mobile POS as well, traffic counting, wireless solutions, all those sorts of things in stores is where we can help. And we've got a number of tailored services that we offer to our customers that sort of embed all of those technologies across those services. So new store openings and refits is a big thing for us. Now, by saying new store openings, we don't mean that we're the guys that turn up 3 days before the store opens and plug in some poles. That's not what we're about. We're working with our clients way back, sort of 3 months before the store opens. We're working with them, marking up IT plans, plotting IT around the store, so we can plan structured cabling, and working with main contractors and electricians to put all of that underlying infrastructure in place to support the store. So by the time we get to IT install, before opening week, we've done all of the prep work, all of the planning, and all of the implementation services ourselves. We know that the infrastructure works, so we can successfully deploy technology at that point. So it's a long-term plan for us when it comes to new stores and refits, and we work with our customers to make sure we can deliver that service from start to finish. Technology rollouts is another big thing for us. So whether a customer is looking to improve their POS estate or put wireless in store or improve customer experience, we can be the guys that can help you roll that technology out and plan that across your entire estate. Connectivity solutions, obviously, it's one of the topics for today, talking about wireless connectivity. We also work with some fixed line providers as well, where that's appropriate for our customers. And all of these tailored services are backed up with project management. I mean, that's a key service that we offer. We've got a dedicated team in-house that can make sure that when we embark on a project with the customer, we've got the right teams in place back end to make sure that the project rolls out successfully, on time and on budget, which is really key for all of our customers. All of this is underpinned by our help desk offerings. So we do, as I said earlier, we manage a lot of client estates across Europe, and we're doing help desk service in-house. Our help desk is based in the UK, so we can do first and second fix support using our own desk. And then obviously we've got the on-site break fix. We can be on site within 4 hours across Europe with stock if needs be to do replacements. And we believe that the key is just to get the store working. So we will attend site to a set SLA with replacement stock to replace that stock and get out of the way so that the customer can carry on trading. We then manage the repair process back end. So the store's working and all of the repair process happens in the background away from the store so that the client experience isn't impacted at all. And as I said, the coverage is across Europe. So we've got a head office based in Abingdon and Oxfordshire, which is where our key hub. Also have an office in Dublin. So we can, from those two locations, we can provide our entire UK workforce covering that area. Across Europe, we have a partner network in place, well established for over 10 years now. So they're the guys that can help us deliver 4-hour SLA where needed, right across Europe with stock, as I said. So we manage all of that piece back end. So the coverage really is truly across Europe. Next slide, please. So the reason for today's webinar, obviously in partnership with Cradlepoint, we had a challenge 3 or 4 years ago when this really comes from our new store openings work with clients. The pressure's really on for us when we're working with fixed line providers, because obviously if the store's not online, it can't trade. And we, as part of our project management services, we manage that fixed line connectivity in store. And we were getting to the point where we were putting ourselves under huge pressure to get those lines installed when we weren't in control of that process. So we went to the market to start looking at partners that we could work with to alleviate that problem. And after some due diligence, we settled on working with Cradlepoint. And the relationship started by delivering 4G routers in store. Primarily at the very start, if we were in a position where the fixed line couldn't go in on time, we would put in a 4G solution from Cradlepoint. The store could get online and start trading, and everybody was really happy with that. But as that's evolved over the last few years, we've now got customers relying on the Cradlepoint solution, potentially in pop-up locations, where they've got a store trading for maybe about 12 months. They don't want the expense of a fixed line, so they run their stores off 4G. Also in the failover, so that we've got primary circuits, but we've got 4G acting as a failover, and that's like an automatic flip over in some solutions that we can offer. And we've now developed even a per device service where we can work with our customers across Europe to deploy these devices on a per device fixed fee type basis. So rather than you going through the expense of purchasing hundreds of devices, potentially looking at the complexities around getting SIM cards into those devices, providing the data services, etc., we can wrap that all in to a per device service so that we can provide the device, the connectivity, the install and the ongoing support, so that we can give you a really tailored solution wrapped around that Cradlepoint offering. All of the devices in store are managed via the NetCloud solution from Cradlepoint. So that's our window in to all of our client sites, where we can monitor the devices, make sure they're up, make sure they're working, and we can see when there's issues. And the great thing about the NetCloud solution is it is really a window into the store where we can start to get access into the devices that actually sit behind the Cradlepoint device, which is really, really useful stuff. So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce Roger and Paul from Cradlepoint to the call, who can talk a bit more around their portfolio and how they're helping their customers in retail.
Okay, Thank you, Steve, and Aaron, and thank you for inviting us to be part of this this webinar today. So that was a really useful introduction there, Steve, in terms of our long-standing relationship with KFP. So I don't want to repeat too much of that, but yeah, absolutely. KFP provide a best of breed service into retail, and from our point of view at Cradlepoint, our focus is very much being that connectivity partner. Steve has already described the traditional use case for Cradlepoint and what started our relationship with KFP, which is around providing that day one connectivity for retailers when fixed connectivity is delayed in terms of its availability. And that still remains a very valid use case today, but it has also evolved to the point where retailers are now asking the question, well, do I even still need to put a fixed sorry, I think I dropped off there a second. So retailers are asking the question, do I even still need to put a fixed connection in to my stores, or can I actually run my business completely now on a wireless cellular network? And that's really the theme for today's presentation that Roger will be delivering shortly, hence the term cutting the wires. So at that point, I shall hand you over to Roger.
Thank you, Paul, and good morning, everybody. Roger Jones here from Cradlepoint. If anybody wants to ask a question whilst we're going along, you'll see that there's the Q&A button on the bottom as you move your mouse down on your screens. I have the Q&A open. I will attempt to read it whilst I'm also presenting. So we're going to talk about the wireless WAN, and let's quickly define that. This is a wide area connection which is not using good old copper or fibre in the ground, provided by OpenReach or Virgin Media or whomever. The wireless WAN from a UK perspective is relying on our 4 mobile operators that we have in this country. So that gives us a great deal of diversity, but it also gives us the choice of 4 different operators across the country as required, or even multiple operators in the same location, and we'll certainly talk about that. Aaron, next slide, please. So why a wireless WAN? Well, of course, one of the drivers that has been here for a long time is mobiles, vehicles, the ability to deploy connectivity into temporary locations, into the middle of fields for rock concerts, all sorts of different pop-up stores in high streets. There's many solutions that have driven the use of originally 3G and now 4G connectivity. Now we're seeing a very strong push into fixed sites. Traditionally, that's been for failover, so 4G as failover, but now we're seeing both the price point and the speed of the network, I'll talk about both of those in a little while, becoming quite a realistic alternative. The other thing that, of course, certainly in the world of retail, but across many verticals, IoT is becoming quite a key thing, where you need to support all sorts of different applications and devices in your locations that in many cases you don't want to put onto your corporate network. It looks like a fantastic device or application that the line of business or the retail team want to use, but you've got to manage it through security, get that stuff connected through to its cloud engine that it's almost certainly using. And so there is this whole requirement to see parallel networks for IoT devices and other applications. And if you've been around as long as I have, it does make me smile a little bit, the whole concept of edge computing, where everybody started with mainframes, then went to PCs, which are edge computing, and then we went away from PCs to thin clients, and then we wandered off into web browsers and everything went up to the cloud. But hey, guess what? People are talking about edge computing again, how the world goes around and around. It's all quite amusing, really. If you're younger, you probably don't get it, but if you're an old git like me, you probably do. So edge computing's there. Again, requirements for the edge compute requirements to give you low latency at the edge rather than having time critical data traverse up to the cloud and back again. Can you compute some of it at the edge and just pass up the results from that? That needs some connectivity. It might be slightly different from you know, a huge pipe to take all sorts of video streaming up there if you can process video images locally and just take what you need and send it up. So what I'm saying here really is that the network is changing, the applications are changing, the devices are changing, and is that fixed network that has been around for a long time still really the right thing to use? Is moving all the data from your edges, from your stores, from your warehouses to your data center the right thing to do? Is a lot of data now traversing out towards the cloud? Now, next slide, please, Aaron. So wireless WAN in fixed sites may not be an obvious thing for many retailers. Small stores, it's quite a good possibility. Large stores, is it a possibility? I'm hoping that by the end of the few slides I have today that will show it as a definite possibility. Warehouses, certainly. Warehouses obviously have various different amounts of bandwidth requirements depending on your business. But again, warehouses can quite often be in out-of-town locations where wired connectivity, particularly wired connectivity to local exchanges, can be a bit exciting. And then you're starting to look at Ethernet circuits, and they're still reasonably horrendous costs. And offices, of course. Now, offices have, until the last 3 months or so, have traditionally been very high bandwidth applications, and the fixed wired network has clearly been the right choice there. And I'm not sure that we're saying at the moment for a large headquarters building that the wireless WAN is going to be your first choice, but it's certainly going to give you some options, which we'll discover on the next slide or two. Store delivery vehicles, the transporting from warehouses to stores, home delivery vehicles, and of course pop-ups, which are becoming an increasingly interesting area as people are looking to stay outside in the fresh air, well, certainly while it's summer. And the ability for you to pop up a store in a different location and sell some of your products which you haven't been able to move in the last 3 months is certainly a great opportunity. And of course, as I still have £45 in my wallet, and I've had that same £45 in my wallet since March the 20-something, and I don't really know what to do with it at the moment, everybody's gone contactless. So you're going to need good, reliable connectivity in those pop-up environments. Digital signage, surveillance cameras, thermal cameras, kiosks and concessions, some really obvious opportunities to use parallel networks for various different Internet of Things devices. There's lots and lots of use cases. But typically, you've had wired networks for your fixed sites. You may have had a little bit of 4G connectivity for mobile. You may have popped in the odd ADSL line for IoT, or maybe you've used some 4G. But you've been looking at 3 different networks or a network of various different components. Certainly what we can do with Cradlepoint is we can create a single network which covers all of these sites, whether you want to use them wired, wireless, or even Wi-Fi, of course, as an uplink connectivity. Next slide, please, Aaron. So let's first of all, let's talk about business continuity. This is something that I'm sure some of you have thought about. Well, I certainly have. But I'm a little bit odd. What happens if someone comes around the corner where I live and accidentally flips their car into my OpenReach green cabinet where all my fiber to the cabinet connectivity is? What am I going to do for the internet if they take that cabinet out and they take a large number of my neighbors out? And as you can see from this picture here, this is actually a Marlow for any of those who are interested. This cabinet is clearly serving a lot of retailers as well as domestic customers here. That's a significant downtime, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. That cabinet isn't coming back in a couple of days' time. That's going to be a few weeks' work before they fix that. And so we need to think about how we can add business continuity, serious business continuity with diversity. Next slide, please, Aaron. So this is something that we've been doing at Cradlepoint for a very long time. This is really where the Cradlepoint business started, where we have a thing called a 4G adapter, which connects to your existing wired router and provides you with a failover connection to a 4G network. So the 4G adapters are quite simple devices. They act pretty much as a bridge. For those of you who know those things, it's just going to be a pass-through device, and your existing router will be able to understand that that connection is made and ready to go. And if you lose your wired connection, traffic will automatically fail over to your cellular network provider of choice. And of course, we have the ability in those adapters to support 2 SIMs. So in the event that one of the networks has become unavailable for any reason, you can flip the device will automatically stop using SIM 1 and start using SIM 2 and make a connection to an alternate network. And as you folks may understand, in the UK, we have mast sharing. So in the event that a mast has had a problem, that could then affect both Vodafone and O2 on a single mast, or 3 and EE on a single mast. I'm not saying it would happen, but it could happen. And so diversity across mast provision is also another thing to consider. So our adapter is all cloud managed. You'll be able to see all of those adapters across your environment, understand the traffic going through them, understand how much traffic is hitting your 4G network, look at your potential bills if you're using a capped SIM. We have the ability with the cloud management to do machine learning and understand the trends of your data usage on your 4G SIM card and whichever of our devices it in, so you can also do predictions on how much bandwidth you're going to use in the next month. Next slide, please, Aaron. The other thing, of course, is using 4G as another leg for your network. Actually not just having the 4G adapter as a failover device, but actually having it live. Having your router or your SD-WAN device in your branch use that 4G bandwidth and steer particular traffic to it. All of a sudden you want to add a new solution which is using some video technology. You may decide that that needs to go down the wired connection, but you can offload some of your other traffic over the 4G connection. So this will then allow, not only will it give you diversity, but it's also going to give you additional bandwidth. And let's think about the cost of bandwidth here, folks. I have sitting next to me a Cradlepoint E3000 router, which I shall mention in a minute in more detail. I have a £35 per month EE SIM in it. That's including that, that's what it costs me. That's a little bit more than my BT broadband connection into my house. My BT broadband connection is currently running at 41 megs. My E3000 on EE, I clocked it at 251 megs the other day. And yes, there is a router involved, but the actual ongoing cost per month for me for that is £35. So that's actually, you know, some of the developments that's happened in 4G over the last year or so. Not only have we got better network coverage, but the speeds have gone up significantly. And of course, there are fair usage policies across all broadband connections, but including cellular. The fair usage policy for your information on that EE SIM is 1 terabyte a month. There's no way I'm ever going to get anywhere near that under any circumstances. Next slide, please, Aaron. So wireless WAN everywhere. We have 99% coverage in the UK of the population. That is different from the physical geography of the United Kingdom and Ireland. But we do have coverage. That doesn't mean that there is coverage at high speed in every location. I'm sure you all know that. Just to give you a little bit more background on how I've achieved the 251 megabits per second, the mobile networks have been launching something called 4G Plus or LTE Advanced, if you're an American person. And this is the ability for the towers to send your devices multiple or parallel streams of data. You may be familiar with this with some of the latest Wi-Fi standards, 802.11ac and Wi-Fi 6 and all that other mumbo jumbo numbers that they come up with. and the 4G networks are now supporting that. So EE and Vodafone and O2, those three have launched that. 3 are also launching it. The coverage is much higher than 5G, but it's not as generic and as high as the general 4G network. But that does allow us to connect multiple data streams from a location. Next slide, please, Aaron.
Rog, we have a question in the Q&A.
Oh, we do.
Should we answer that before we move on?
Yes, so the first question from James is, what is the connectivity handoff of this 4G adapter offer? It is a gigabit Ethernet adapter, James, in the CBA 850 product that we have. So you would connect that to an Ethernet port on your existing router environment. Does the 4G adapter provide DHCP so that our router is provided an IP address in order to break out to the internet? So James, we can actually run the adapter in 2 ways. We can run it in what is called pass-through mode, whereby the IP address from your cellular provider is passed directly through the adapter to your router. Or if you wish, you can put it in NAT mode, whereby the 4G adapter terminates the service provider IP connection and then does indeed use DHCP to provide your router with an IP address. So you have the choice to use it in either configuration.
Brilliant, thank you, Rog, and great questions there. Yeah, move on to next slide.
Thank you very much. So apart from our adapter products, we have all-in-one connectivity. We have a range of branch routing devices, mobile routing devices, and IoT-focused routing devices as well. These include multiple wired ports, which can be configured to LAN or WAN as you required. They all but our lowest model of branch routers support dual modems, which means that the router will connect to 2 mobile networks concurrently, and both modems can have 2 SIMs, so you could actually have a router which is connected or has the ability to connect to all 4 of the UK mobile networks, 2 of them live and 2 of them in standby. In addition, you can have it connected to a wired or multiple wired connections, and so we support SD-WAN capabilities, load balancing or traffic steering across those different connections, policy routing to allow you to route different applications in different directions. We have edge security. It is a fully cloud managed service. All of the actually all of the routers support Wi-Fi capability on board. The adapters do not act as an access point, but all of the routers do. In some cases, they can accept external Wi-Fi antennas for better coverage. The smaller ones are typically designed for smaller locations where they provide local Wi-Fi access point functionality. So that gives us the same capabilities. From a Cradlepoint perspective, we have our newest products are our E300, which is a small branch type device. I've clocked that at 240 megs with Wi-Fi 6 on board. And also the E3000, which is for larger branches, which is the one I clocked at 251 megs with Wi-Fi 6 on board. That was actually, the 251 megs was from my phone through that product. These can be deployed to thousands of locations by our cloud management system. They're what we call zero touch, which I'm sure you'll appreciate is a little bit of a marketing term. You do physically need to plug it in, install a SIM if that hasn't been done already by the fine team at KFP. The Cradlepoint routers will quite happily come up on their SIM. They don't need to be connected to a wired network to bring themselves up and load their config, unlike some of our competitors. So it's quite happily bring itself up to do that. We use a network management protocol called Stream, which significantly lowers the amount of network management traffic that is passed over a 4G network, which of course, if you're in a capped SIM environment, the network management traffic does actually count against your monthly allowance. But today in the UK, the uncapped SIMs aren't particularly expensive, so capped SIMs are probably relevant for failover scenarios, but if you're running these devices as a full-time 4G connection, I think working with the service providers to look at the uncapped SIMs is probably a good thing to do now. Next slide, please, Aaron. There's the other thing, and something that Paul and I have been working on quite a lot recently is the pop-up and parallel networks. If you're wondering about the quick picture of Mrs. Queen there, this is the famous Sainsbury's 100-year pop-up store in Covent Garden. Just a bit of a random photo if you'd suddenly wondered why I put Her Majesty in the slide deck. It's just one of those things. Next slide, please, Aaron. So we have a number of different ways of doing this, but clearly pop-up locations or day one locations are quite likely to have no wired broadband or wired broadband that possibly belongs to somebody else that you may be using part of. All of these things can cause you interesting security considerations, and if you can get a good Wi-Fi signal, you can use some of the routers to connect as a Wi-Fi client onwards to an existing Wi-Fi network. But in most cases, if you can get 4G, you're going to be able to bring up a Cradlepoint router on 4G from scratch in the middle of a shopping precinct, in the middle of a field, a rock concert or a country fair, any of these things. And the Cradlepoint router will connect up to our Net Cloud management system. It will apply the configuration, create the VPNs back to where you need them to be created, or if it's just a point of sale credit card transaction device, which is pre-encrypted, of course, it will go up to that cloud-based service and provide you with a connection to take payments via that. These routers can, of course, be standard branch type routers. They can also be our hardened mobile routers, which can be vehicle mounted. They can run from 12-volt batteries if you need to do that. There's a whole range of different options to getting these things up and running very, very quickly. So it's quite easy to pop up a network where there's no electricity, there's no wired connectivity. As long as you can get a 4G signal, you're going to get on and you're going to be able to connect your applications. On to the next slide, please, Aaron. So very quickly, let's just, well, actually, I'm ahead of schedule for a change. That makes a change. Let's just quickly look at the different solutions that we have at Cradlepoint on the next slide, please, Aaron. So starting at the top, I'm sure most of you are now very familiar with the concept of cloud management. It's certainly not a unique idea from Cradlepoint, but it is something that we've been working on for quite a large amount of years now. And this is our Net Cloud Manager. This is hosted up in the cloud. It provides multi-tenancy, of course, and allows us to give you, either you as a customer or KFP as a partner, the ability to manage your entire network from a web-based or an app-based interface. So we support Android and iOS tablets and phones, and of course we also support web browsers which allow you to access Net Cloud Manager, provision your devices, monitor your devices, look at the traffic going through your devices, make configuration changes. We have grouping functions, so if you have a range of stores and all of a sudden you wanted to change the staff SSID across all of your stores, because the routers support multiple SSIDs, you can go in and you can do a quick test on a test router. Once you're happy with that configuration, you go to that stores group, you change the SSID and the passcode, you click apply, and that will then automatically roll out that SSID change to all of the routers in that particular group. Equally, if it's time for a router software upgrade, you can choose when to do that software upgrade by scheduling, and you can apply that to groups of routers. And you can branch the adapters, sorry, you can put the branch adapters and routers into various different groups depending on function, depending on geography. So starting at the left, we have two mobile routers. We have the IBR 900, which is a compact mobile router, and we have the IBR 1700, which is a larger mobile router, which supports more Wi-Fi hotspots. It supports dual modems and a higher throughput than the IBR 900. These are all vibration and environmentally protected devices. We have these running on the emergency services network in the UK. So they are being used in the Met Police, Hertfordshire Police, a number of fire and rescue services around the country are using these Cradlepoint devices. That's not relevant to retail, but that is a very demanding customer base for mobile connectivity. We have them in a whole range of transport companies, whether it's bus companies providing Wi-Fi hotspots for customers or delivery vehicles. We have GPS tracking capability on these devices, so you can see where your fleet is, where your fleet has been. We also monitor the state of the mobile network as these devices are traveling around, so you can build up a heat map, if you like, of connectivity in an area that a delivery vehicle may be working in. Then we have our branch 4G and 5G routers. Now, I've got all the way through this presentation and we've just come to mention 5G. Let's take, because I have 5 seconds or so in a few minutes here, to talk about 5G and where we are with 5G in the UK. So firstly, folks, there are 2 flavors of 5G. There is what is called sub-6, brilliant techies, you've got to love them, and millimeter wave. Sub-6 means it's below 6 gigahertz in the spectrum, and millimeter wave means it's right up in the 26 gigahertz range. In the UK, Ofcom have only auctioned spectrum for the sub-6 gigahertz network. They have yet to auction the millimeter wave 26 gigahertz part of the spectrum. A huge amount of the stuff you read about 5G in the press and on the web is about millimeter wave that is being deployed in the USA and South Korea. And these are the 5G networks that are going to crack 3 gig into your location. Now, the sub-6 gigahertz 5G, which is licensed by Ofcom and the carriers have license allocation, is probably the theoretical maximum of the sub-6 gigahertz is about 1.5 gigs. We've been doing some testing in Germany and we have got it cracking well above 300 megs in our current beta testing of our 5G adapter. So that adapter in the middle of the screen there is currently a 4G one on the market. There will be, towards the end of the year, possibly moving into early next year, a 5G version of that product. And that will allow us to connect any existing router or Cradlepoint router to a 5G network. It does have a 2.5 gig Ethernet port on it, which you need to be able to take advantage of the potentially over 1 gigabit per second of bandwidth that the 5G networks in the UK will provide. The E3000, which is our latest all-in-one router, has the ability to take 2 modems, and one of those modems early next year will be a 5G modem that will connect internally inside the E3000, and that will mean the E3000 will not only have a 4G plus connection, but it will then also be able to connect onto the 5G network and use those 2 networks concurrently. That's the current outline for 5G. I have to say, and I would love to have this conversation in a few minutes' time, if any of you think that a 4G plus network, which is, depending on your location, it's very location dependent, could easily be running between 100 and 200 megs. Is 5G actually something you need today? It probably will be, almost certainly will be in the future. But we actually think that the 4G plus networks that the carriers are currently rolling out in advance of 5G are going to provide many, many users with significant bandwidth upgrades on their fiber to the cabinet. Is it faster than fiber to the premise? No. Is it cheaper than fiber to the premise? Yes. Is it cheaper than cable? A little bit, but there's probably not a great deal in it. So a real significant alternative to the current wired options. Of course, Ethernet connectivity to a location, bidirectional 100 megabits per second, absolutely currently guaranteed, no contention, or gigabit Ethernet to a location, bidirectional with no contention. It is always going to be the most understood connectivity. It's also the most, from a bandwidth perspective, you're not sitting in any form of contention. But as you all know, there is a price to pay for that. and that is a business decision that you need to take based on the applications that you're running. Just to finish, on the right hand side, we have some IoT 4G routers that are designed to go into machine to machine or application kiosks and provide a 4G network connectivity to, you know, 1 or 2 devices that need it in an environment, whether it's in store or whether it's in a warehouse. They can very quickly installed, popped onto probably a capped SIM, because most IoT devices, unless they're video, aren't using significant amounts of data, and they can sit there and provide that always on connectivity. They have, in the case of all the routers, a wired connection option, but also the ability to create a Wi-Fi hotspot from those as well. The final point I'm going to make on this slide, because I'm just coming up to the end of my session, is up the top there is something called NetCloud API. So our NetCloud Manager is a way for you to manage all of these network devices and the VPN networks and SD-WAN capability that they have. But quite rightly, a lot of customers say, well, I really want to integrate that into my current network management platform. And so we have published the NetCloud API, which gives access to every single part of the NetCloud management environment. And so anything that you can do from our web-based interface or our app-based interface, you can do via our API from an application of your choice. Yes, it will require some integration to be done, but it does give you that ability to you know, put the NetCloud interface to one side and use the interface that your teams are used to and have that integrated via the RESTful API that we have from NetCloud. Next slide, please, Aaron. So just to sum up, the Cradlepoint solutions are being deployed in fixed, mobile and IoT locations. Our NetCloud Manager allows us to construct and build software-defined WANs, deploy edge security. We also have cloud-based security, manage your Wi-Fi networks. One of the things I didn't mention actually is out-of-band management. It's not particularly exciting to many people, but we have many customers who use our 4G adapters and 4G routers just to provide a complete out-of-band management interface into their other IT equipment. So if you think about that 4G adapter we had connected to the router, that's connected to 4G clearly, and we have the ability to support serial console ports, USB ports from that adapter, which can plug into the router or other network device that you have in your environment. So in the case you do lose your wired connection, you can use the 4G adapter or a 4G router to actually bring up a console session or an HTTP or HTTPS session or an RDP to a PC or VNC to a Linux or Mac device and all millions of other abbreviations all at once, Rog. Let's not try to kill everybody. It acts as a gateway into your internal network, fully secured from NetCloud, to allow you to reach into the network when the wired connectivity has gone down and do all sorts of outbound management. So we have a whole range of customers using our products purely as a separate management interface. We support multiple carriers, so diversity is key here. Yes, if you have multiple wired connections into your store location, they probably come from the same exchange down the same duct, unless you spent a huge amount of money. Well, we can instantly add 1, 2, 3, or 4 network providers into that with our multi-carrier cellular capability. And there's telematics and in-vehicle Wi-Fi. We're doing a lot of work with Microsoft Azure at the moment to provide Azure IoT connectivity, Amazon Greengrass connectivity, and our newer routers will also be supporting Docker in the next release, which is due towards the end of this month, where you'll be able to install your containerized Docker applications physically onto the router to do some edge computing. We're just getting to grips with this now, understanding some of the different use cases. We have a very interesting use case from an Italian bus company who have a video recognition application which allows the cameras in the passenger bus to understand how many passengers are on board, what the social distancing situation is like, and provide reports up to a central command center. And that visual recognition application is going to be running, hopefully, we're still working on it, in our IBR 1700 router, which is providing 4G connectivity in a Wi-Fi hotspot in that bus for customers, and of course for the driver and his or her telematics. Just some examples of some of the things that we're doing with the Cradlepoint solution. That is me. Thank you very much for listening, and I believe we're going to go to Q&A now, Aaron.
Yes, thank you, Rog. That was really, really intuitive. Thank you. And also thank you to Steve and Paul as well. Let's open this up to a Q&A. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. And if everyone can turn off mute, we'll allow for a Q&A session.
Excellent. Well, I've got a question here from Philip. He says, "Hi, have you seen improved uptime and SLAs compared to fixed lines?" Well, that's I might ask Paul and Steve to come into this. From my technical perspective, we've not seen any. We all know that networks. We saw Virgin have a problem in London last week or the week before. I think all of the operators have issues. I think the amount of technology around the cell towers to ensure uptime is quite significant now. We do know, and I'm not picking on EE in particular, but because EE's network is also supporting the emergency services network in the UK, they have some very strict SLAs that they have to adhere to. It should be said that in an emergency situation, you're all aware that the mobile networks can be effectively partitioned to allow the emergency services and other agencies better access to the network. That's always a caveat that has to be made here. The ESN is effectively a bus lane along the side of the rest of the network for EE, where it is a protected bus lane. It's not particularly fast, but it is absolutely guaranteed. I don't know if Paul and Steve have any further comments on uptime and SLAs at all from that perspective?
Yeah, so from my point of view, Roger, I think that the best illustration that I could provide is when a BT MPLS network goes down, for example, for an enterprise organization, and then comes back up again, a few minutes later or a short time later, it's no great shock. It's quite a regular occurrence by comparison. If a mobile network goes down for any period of time, it's national headline news. So in terms of availability, I would lean towards the mobile networks as being more readily available in terms of uptime. But to be fair, what we do have to consider is more for mobile networks is coverage. We are, as Roger said earlier, at sort of 99% or so coverage. But the reality is there are still some areas of the country where 4G coverage is quite minimal, and therefore the experience might not be as good as in an urbanized area or an area where we're very close to those cell towers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Are there any more questions from anyone else? I hope we've answered your question, James and Philip. But please do let us know if you have any further questions. Yeah, we're happy to stay on and answer some more questions. But we will be sending out a follow-up email. So if you do have any other questions in the meantime, please feel free to get in touch. But if there's no further questions, look, thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. We certainly have. Yep.
Aaron, would you like me to do my little stunt demonstration? See if I can make it work, because I haven't done a demo and I like to see if I can make it fail.
Go for it.
Go for it. Okay, folks, what we're going to do is I'm going to share my whole screen, This may affect my Zoom performance, but I'm just going to run. I'm still on Zoom, and I'm just going to run, as I've been doing this on 4G. I'm just going to rerun the speed test, and let's see how fast we can get it running whilst I'm actually talking on Zoom. Just to show you that I may have been talking a lot, but this stuff actually does work. So that's the download speed of 230 megs on Zoom, and are we going to crack 40 megs upload? Possibly, yes, just about. So that's concurrently. That is, it says I'm in Lewisham and I'm on EE. I'm not in Lewisham, but I am on EE. Just for those of you who are interested, this does actually work. Now you're going to say you couldn't hear anything I said then, Aaron, didn't you?
No, we heard you perfectly, Rog. Thank you for that.
Excellent. So
Excellent
that's a speed test whilst on Zoom.
Okay, brilliant. Look, thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate your time. We're looking to do more of these because we think, you know, that they hold so much value. So really appreciate your time, and yeah, hope to catch up soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.